the readings this week have been Mark 10 to 14. So, right towards the climax of the Gospel, Tom.
Yeah, it's juicy. Two parables of the problem. This is the bit where you imagine if you were stood next to Jesus, you'd start to sweat when you know what he's saying. You're like, whoa, like, we're not holding anything back. Mm-hmm. So the first one is he's walking along, fig tree, not bearing fruit, and he's like, "You fig tree, you're not bearing fruit. I curse you." And I imagine if you were hanging around Jesus, you'd be quite used to him doing things that were very unusual.
Yeah.
But even this one, I think...
It's not one you'd make up, is it?
It's a bit like, what was that all about? Then, it's like a sandwich. So think of fig tree and fig tree as the bread. In the meat of the sandwich, Jesus then goes to a fig tree, the temple, and he sees no fruit. And he's like, "I curse you." And what he does basically is he says two phrases which are the equivalent of declaring the curse.
Okay.
And tipping of the temple. It's declaring the curse. And the first one is, "You're meant to be a house of prayer for the nations." Now, a house of prayer for the nations, even on itself as a phrase, makes sense to us, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. We kind of get what that means. But what is always so rich in the Bible is to then look at a phrase and think, I wonder if that is a phrase that he's quoting. Is it like, "I'll be back," or, like you get sort of having your culture, that the quotes that you use, and "we're on our way to Wembley," and you think, we all know what that means. Yeah. House of Prayer for the Nations, it's a quote from Isaiah 56, and in this passage in Isaiah, God is basically saying, even the eunuchs, even the foreigners, those who were excluded from coming into the temple, even they will have a better inheritance than the sons and the daughters in the day when they choose to do what pleases God. Okay. When they say, whatever, we're going to live for you, God, and we're going to hold fast to your covenant. And so what this is a promise from Isaiah of a reversal. Those who really have hearts that are soft towards God, God will give them unbelievable favour. And those who are right at the centre, who should have really inherited everything, because they're proud, they get a worse inheritance. And so one of my favourite verses, one of Jesus's and the New Testament's favourite verses is, God opposes the proud but he gives grace to the humble. Mm-hmm. And so what Jesus comes and he says, look, this should be a place where the humble can receive unbelievable inheritance and blessing. And den of robbers, which is what he says, you're not a house of prayer for the nations, you're a den of robbers. Again, it's a quote, and this is harder to understand just from the phrase. Jeremiah 7, and what it says basically in Jeremiah 7, Jeremiah is having an absolute go at the leaders of the temple. And he's saying, you deal with other people unjustly, you oppress, somebody comes up to you, they're there for the taking, and you take advantage of them. Mm-hmm. And you follow other gods. And then you say, this is the temple of the Lord, this is the temple of the Lord, this is the temple of the Lord. Like, in modern day parlance, hey, we're Christians, God's on our side, like, we're the good guys, but you're doing all this horrendous stuff. Mm. And he's like, I'm sick of it. Jeremiah says, God's sick of that. And Jesus basically says, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Like, God is sick of this. You're meant to be bearing fruit, a place where people can come and receive inheritance. I'm done with it. Mm-hmm. And he that's a parable. Amazing. And then he go back to the fig tree. Sorry, just to finish the other loaf of bread. Go back to the other loaf of bread, and they walk past and be like, that fig tree's dead. And so what you get in this unbelievably provocative section is basically Jesus coming and saying, the way you guys are doing religion is disgusting, and I curse it, and it will die.
The verse that came to mind as you were speaking was, I have not come to abolish the Old Testament, but to fulfill it.
Yeah.
And he steps right into the Old Testament prophetic tradition, and he's a fulfilment of it, isn't he? It's not like away with what's gone before in terms of, what the Lord had given to his people Israel. It's much more coming to fulfill it, to make it actually happen, rather than to cast it to one side.
So if you ever watch the news and hear of a Christian leader who does something really horrible and gets found out, or you have gone to a church and somebody who said there was a Christian has done something and if in those moments something has risen within you, like an anger, and you just think to yourself, I hate this hypocrisy, you are in the same place as Jesus was. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what Jesus is doing. He's criticised. He's coming to call a curse down on that kind of faith. And the second parable that he uses is of wicked tenants, which is almost even more provocative than the fig tree. It's like God's given you, He's leased you His land. You just needed to look after just grow the staff and look after the farm. Send Him some of the produce. You can keep a lot of it for yourself. And they're not doing it, and he sends a person after person, and rather than responding to what they say, they kill them, and then they kill his son. And again, he's talking about people who claim to be Christian, modern parlance, claim to be Christians. They claim to be people who do good, and ultimately, everything is turned for their own end. Mm. It's all about them. Postmodernism is the thing of the day. Everything's about power. Mm. Everywhere we look, we see presidents who claim to be Christians and abuse power. We see, the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia right now, fully behind Putin, and he is invading a nation and killing innocents. Mm-hmm. People say war crimes, and you look at that and think, we're so attuned to the sense of power, and what the Bible shows us is, we're not the first to be attuned to that. Mm. From the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, what he says to us is, will you use your faith to pursue your own goals? Will you take any power you can get out of this book, any power you can get out of this, will you take any of that power to get what you want out of life? And if you will, God will curse you, he'll come against you, he will come down on you ultimately. Yeah. Or will you be somebody who humbly, faithfully will say, God, you're the boss. I make my faith all about bearing fruit to you. I will do what you want, no matter what it is.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, the first two episodes that we looked at, the Gospel of Mark, we really pulled out the themes of authority and compassion. Mm. And this is kind of almost like a climactic. This is what walking in authority and compassion gets you, doesn't it? I mean, there's the compassion on people of you're just doing this totally wrong, and you are preventing. You're not going in yourselves, and you're preventing others from getting in. So there's that compassion, and there's also that authority. It's outrageous to do what Jesus did in the temple unless you're the owner. Yeah. Unless it's yours, unless it's your house. Where you can walk in and tell people what to do. So it's authority and compassion coming into conflict. And we looked at this before with other authorities, with lower authorities. And again, I mean, we've talked about it quite a lot this year. We see Jesus fighting. Jesus is fighting for us. It doesn't come to violent blows, but almost right to the edge of that. Yeah. He won't accept things contrary to his authority, which ultimately hurt people.
And the things he says here would probably fall under a hate crime. Yeah, wouldn't it, in our current language? Yeah. And of course, it did for them. Yeah, they ultimately convicted him of it. Yeah, and sentenced him to death because of it. Yeah. So he fights, absolutely, with everything he's got. He's like, I will not put up with this. Yeah. I'm against you hypocrites. I'm against you arrogant abusers of power. I'm against those of you who claim to know me, to know God, and you're crushing the poor. And it's the most prophetic thing you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. And just in terms of response, there's like the two sides to this, isn't there? There's the bit that you alluded to of, oh, thank you, Jesus. You're on my side, or when I've been hurt, when I see power being misused. I mean, there's a bit in I think every human, but many of us, it's like, I hate seeing leadership abused. I hate seeing faith abused for people's own ends. I hate it when I come against the kind of narcissistic power play. oh, thank you, Jesus, that you experienced that and you fight against it. So that's the one side.
You fight against all of them.
All of them, but then the other side is like, oh my gosh, like, what would you come against me for?
Yeah.
And it's quite searching, isn't it? And I think the scriptures challenge us so much to not only think of ourselves as the poor being lifted up, but also press on us a little bit to say you are the proud being cast down as well. And it's the Gospels it's more than art, but it's that quality of art that searches the one looking at it. It's like, oh, you're exposing things in me. And when we come into contact with that, it's one of those little signs. It's like, this is more than a book. This is more than wise life advice. It's
for sure. I mean, I can still remember a few really vivid moments where something shifted and I suddenly realised how dark my soul was, how much I'd done to how many people, when I'd interacted with them, I was just really trying to manipulate them or maneuver them into the position that worked for me. And if I couldn't do it, I'd just move on. And whether that's, people of the opposite sex, people of the same sex, people who are younger than me, kids or elderly people I ignore because they don't serve my purposes. And it's crushing moments.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, Andy, there is that real... It goes beyond I'm just reading something into this is like something. It's something being held up to me.
Yeah.
I'm seeing something here, and it's not easy. It's hard. It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that in that place where you expect, therefore, judgment, you find the little glimmers of mercy triumphing over judgment.
Let's get there. Let's move on from the opposition to our narcissism. So
there is this sense that there is this sense, isn't there, that the authority of Jesus is coming like a tidal wave, and you're looking at it and thinking, this has to take me down with it.
Yeah.
Because I recognise that I've abused power.
Yeah.
Over and over again. And as you're at that point, you then come across this woman who has got oil, and she's weeping at the feet of Jesus. Now, she has abused her life. She's used her sexual attractiveness to draw men towards herself. And we don't know the story, so maybe she was always the victim, but it's not presented like that.
Yeah.
And she pours oil on Jesus' feet, and what does he say to her? He says, he celebrates her. He lifts her up. He speaks dignity, and unexpected fruitfulness comes from worship. Worship is the first place you go to when you have a sense of, I want God, I want more of God. To worship, and there's three things about worship that she demonstrates. So the story is in chapter 12, is it 13?
Yeah.
Of a woman who's just weeping and pouring oil on Jesus' feet, and everyone's looking at her thinking, she's a sinful woman, like why would you let her do this? And Jesus backs her. And there's three things about it. That worship is the foundation for fruitful faith. Worship is the foundation for fruitful faith. First thing is, it's unto Jesus.
Yeah.
Her attention is actually not on herself. It's not on her sin. It's not on whatever. She's actually just purely doing something for Jesus. She's pouring something on his feet. She's expressing something to him.
Yeah.
And worship is always unto Jesus when it's good worship. Secondly, in a mysterious way, it's about his death.
Yeah.
I don't know if she understood it. Maybe she did.
Yeah.
But there's something that worship is always about the cross. Worship is at its best when it's unto Jesus and it somehow is about his death on the cross. And thirdly is that the worship's costly. Probably her life savings, we don't know.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a place where you want the kingdom, you want Jesus, if you worship that, it's just like the foundations for a life of bearing fruit to God. if you want it to be real, if you don't want to be a hypocrite, if you want to think like, I want to do something that really counts in my faith, worship Jesus about his death, and be willing to make it a costly thing.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a time when we'd gone to see some of Leslie's relatives who live in America, and we were in San Jose.
You know the way, do you? I'm so sorry.
and they lived in a beautiful, beautiful house on this beautiful hill in California. And we'd gone, and we'd been working for a church at the time, not Croydon Vineyard. And we'd gone in a bit of a state. I was not in a great place. And to be honest, I was pretty sick of being Christian, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
And as we went to California and saw this house on this hill, something in me was just getting bitter. Like, I was just like, I've worked for a church, got paid basically nothing, lived to try and serve other people, and I just feel like I'm so annoyed with this. And this is like a vision of everything I could have had and everything I wanted, I thought. We went in, and the carpet was so deliciously thick. If you stood on it, like, you'd feel yourself sink down, which often Americans are so good at, inner furnishings and hospitality. They served us this incredible meal. And part of me was absolutely loving it, and part of me was absolutely crushed by it, because it just seems to be putting in my face everything that I'd given up on and couldn't have because of what I thought I was doing following as a follower of God. And then the guy there said afterwards, if you want, I can take you for a run in my sports car round the hills, or would you prefer to have a dip in the jacuzzi? And I was like, jacuzzi, that was everything it just summed up. And in that night, I was so grumpy. I was so annoyed with the Lord. And then I just, in the midst of that moment, I just suddenly had a sense of Jesus. And I suddenly was like, oh my goodness, he is worth giving up all of this.
Yeah.
He makes all of this worthwhile. Like, just to actually fix on Jesus. Just forget about everything else. Forget about all the frustration, all the disappointment, everything that's hard, everything that you're not getting, everything that you want. And just to think of Jesus. And I almost had a vision of myself, like, just weeping at his feet and being like, I don't know if I've got what it takes. I don't know if I've done good stuff or what, but you are worth it, Jesus. And it was one of the most pure moments of worship I think I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. Because there was a sense of costliness of not even that, is it? It's almost like this is not worth even a little bit compared to who you are.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's always a risk.
If anyone's got a spare jacuzzi and they fancy donating, but I think it was just the sense that Jesus is so amazing.
Yeah.
He's so amazing.
Yeah.
And there's such a richness in my soul when I look at him, and his forgiveness and his love and his protection are so incredible.
Yeah.
It's difficult to put it into words. Yeah. And of course she doesn't put it into words, this lady. I mean, we sing a lot of our stuff, and music helps us because the words don't go quite far enough unless you're super talented.
Sure,
right.
Yeah.
But I really encourage you, if you're in a place where you're not quite sure where things are at, or you're frustrated, or you're feeling lost, or whatever, if you can get to that place of just look at Jesus and worship Jesus, just see him, kiss his feet in your head, like, just worship is always the foundation. It's the beginning. It's the foundation stone for fruitful faith.
Yeah. I love those three points again. So it's like, to Jesus. There's a focus on his death, even if it's in a mysterious way, and it's costly. That has implications for the songs we sing, doesn't it?
I think so. I mean, something that I've noticed, and I totally understand why this happens, is that it sometimes feels like worship's a bit of a pep rally. Like we sing our truth over ourselves. Like, you're always fighting for me, or you love me, or if I worship, it achieves great things.
Yeah.
And those things are true.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been to worship times in some. I won't say where, but sometimes you go somewhere for worship, and you get to the end of it, and you think, I don't remember saying the name Jesus once.
Yeah.
I certainly don't remember celebrating the cross.
Yeah.
What were we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, there was incredible musicianship. There was a sense of atmosphere in the room, but is that biblical worship?
Yeah.
And I just feel that this woman is an example of a worship leader. And Jesus says, everywhere the gospel is preached, I want her to be talked about, because this is the foundation stone.
Yeah.
This is what worship is. Unto Jesus, it's about his death in some way, and it's costly.
Yeah.
It's not about, let me make myself feel better, let me encourage myself, let me strengthen myself because I sing truths about myself.
Yeah.
That's a biblical thing, but that's not worship.
Yeah. Yeah. Need to push in that direction. Totally agree. And then there's
so just on that.
Yeah, keep going.
Culture of Worship Conference in May. Check out our website. If you're in Croydon area, you should come.
Yeah.
Be a Friday night, all day Saturday, a chance to really push into, this is worship, let's do this thing.
Yeah. And all of these things, it's going to be to Jesus. It's going to be focused on him, isn't it? There's going to be lots of songs about the cross, about his death, about his resurrection. And, we don't want to overplay it, but there is that, okay, Jesus, I'm going to give you a weekend. I'm going to give you my Friday night and my Saturday and take it and do what you want with it. So go for it. It's just one small picture of how we can follow in the footsteps. And there's another kind of flash of mercy and flash of glory in the midst of Jesus' authority and compassion. And it's, the inauguration of the Lord's Supper. He gives us a meal. He gives us a meal, doesn't he?
And if you think about it, I mean, I just... There's chaos, isn't there? He's coming. He's coming to take it to the Jerusalem leaders. And we know this because it says at the beginning of verse 10, I think, chapter 10, everybody's like, what are you doing? When he turns, he's at a fork in the road and he turns towards Jerusalem and starts walking there. And all of his followers are like, what's he doing? Why is he doing this? Stay away from there. That's where they're going to kill you. And he's like, no, I'm headed. And he goes. So we know there's chaos. We know he's like bringing it. It's like the showdown. And then he's like, hey guys, let's go and have a bit of food.
Yeah.
And what he does here, I think, is he, as you say, inaugurates the Lord's Supper. And what is the Lord's Supper? It's a fellowship meal. What I think we see Jesus doing, something that is fruitful unto him, something that he loves in faith. If you want to be a fig tree that bears fruit unto God, be present with Jesus' people. Be present with Jesus' people. That's so important. And the second thing, think about the context. Be present for Jesus' people in the midst of bafflement, in the midst of battle, and in the midst of betrayal. There's something that Jesus demonstrates in that decision, right, let's go to this upper room and let's eat together. Now, in that room, most of them haven't got a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
In that room, one of them is going to actually send him to his death, and several others are going to deny they've even met him.
Yeah.
In that room, there is going to be Jesus himself, and several others are going to be persecuted and killed. So there's a picture there of this is the reality of the clash of the kings. The authority of Jesus is coming. Other authorities are going to come against it. What do? Don't sit with your head down and read your Bible on your own.
Yeah.
You don't just go and pray on your own in the garden. No, you gather with others, and in the midst of that, you share bread and wine. You do a meal.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, do this every time. Do this all the time.
Yeah.
And different churches understand that to what exactly he's speaking about to mean slightly different things. But ultimately, to come together with Christians who are baffled.
Yeah.
To come together with other people who know Jesus, who are in the midst of battle, who that you can see they're just in the midst of war in their life, and to come together with them, and you know they're going to betray you.
Yeah.
And to choose in that moment to sit across the table from them, to look them in the eye, to feed them some bread, to take wine from them, whatever that means,
Yeah.
has to be central to what we are as Christians. This is fruitful faith.
Yeah.
And something that really mourns me is when you'll meet people and, you know, they've got like mature Christian name tag on, they've got like I'm a teacher or I'm a preacher or whatever. You know, everywhere they go, they're telling everybody what's what. And you find out they don't do this.
Yeah.
They won't sit with other Christians and love them and serve them. They don't bear fruit to Jesus like Jesus wants it born.
Yeah.
But equally, if you're one of those people and you choose to go to small group, and again, if you're in Croydon, we're relaunching small groups this week, if you choose to go there and you go there and sit with people online or in person, each time you do that, that is a fruitful act to Jesus. You're doing exactly what he asks you to do in your faith.
Yeah.
Every time you come and gather together as church and you choose to speak to the person next to you or to ask somebody at the tea and coffee time, this is what it is. This is fruitful faith. And you might come away from that thinking, well, they just seem baffled.
Yeah.
Or they've betrayed me now. Or they're just in the midst of a battle and I didn't stop the battle.
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah.
This is what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, I mean, you know, like we say, we want to have the scriptures as a mirror. I think in our kind of tradition, our way of doing church, there's the thing that we're careful about. Okay, let's just make sure that we're not singing too much about ourselves. And I think there's a check here as well of let's not minimise the Lord's Supper. It's easy in our tradition, isn't it, to kind of let's get it over with, 5 minutes once a term sort of thing. And actually, the scriptures call us back to, hey, this is central, and you know, the truths that it expresses can be expressed in many ways. But hey, let's make sure we're there and breaking bread and drinking and remembering the cross together as his people. And the Gospels call us to that, don't they? They almost frustrate me. Like, I'd love more details about some of the earlier miracles, about some of the other stuff, but it's like half, a big chunk. It's like, this is what happened in the final week. This is what you need to see. This is what happened when authority and compassion went all the way for his people. And a big part of that was the Lord's Supper. And I don't know. I think there's a check on us in our kind of in our tradition and our way of doing things of, let's never minimise this. Let's always... it can maybe not feel like it's got the emotional woohoo of a fantastic chorus, but actually it's what we need, isn't it? It's what we need.
Yeah, and you know, confession is that we're recording this after Easter weekend. Easter weekend was last weekend. And Thursday evening, which is the evening that this happens before Easter Sunday, I sat there and I thought, I feel like I've failed to provide what should be provided on this evening. It's an evening where Jesus says the church gathers together to remember his death, to celebrate his coming again, and they do it as family. And I thought, and we haven't put that on. And I know you can go too far with these things, but I just thought, exactly as you're saying, like, we can underplay that Jesus actually just asks us to celebrate the Lord's Supper, to come together to celebrate the Lord's Supper. And I thought we should have just done like a bring and share dinner Thursday evening, just get together and just share a bit of the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
And so things like that. And maybe as you're watching, thinking, maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily the bread and wine, I don't think, in every instance. But when you choose to eat with somebody who is a follower of Jesus, and you do it in expression of him, you are creating the space for his mercy to rush in and to bear fruit to Jesus, to bear fruit to God. So maybe there's someone you can invite to share food with. That would be a powerful expression of Mark chapter 10 to 14, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.